Okay, so we want to just welcome you all again tonight, and we're having an amazing menu tonight. So I hope you have all come very hungry. You're going to come hungry and leave
Healthy.
healthy and satiated, right? Okay, so we're so happy that Mary's back again for another evening of excellent lecturing. Let's bow our heads and we will say a short prayer and begin our evening. Dear Heavenly Father, we just welcome you again on night number 3 to this gathering. We are learning so much, and we're just having a wonderful time learning from the wisdom of Mary that you've bestowed upon her over the last 29 years of her labor and service in ministry, of her health store and her veggie restaurant. We just thank you that she's come from Oklahoma to be here with us. And please be with us tonight as we eat the wonderful food that she's prepared, and bless our minds to receive some new knowledge and information. Thank you, Lord, for all of your blessings. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Don't forget the whipped cream on the chia pudding. And yeah, okay. Okay. So we have a little taste of Europe tonight. How many of you have ever had muesli? Okay, good. How many of you ever had it with orange juice on it? It's really good, right? I'll tell you how I learned to do this. It was 10 days after the Twin Towers went down. I was on an airplane going to London to do some consulting for the country life there. And my daughter went with me, and we were staying with a very kind woman named Doris. And every morning, Doris would serve us muesli. And my daughter hated it. When we would leave Doris's to go to the country life there, my daughter would say, "Mom, I can't stand that stuff." I'm like, "But you have to eat it because Doris is not charging us to stay at her bed and breakfast. And that would be very rude. So choke it down." She says, "Well, at least it makes me go to the bathroom." So the next morning, we're sitting down at breakfast with Doris, and my daughter looks at me with the stink eye, right? She's like, and Doris would also serve us orange juice with breakfast. And I was eating the muesli with nothing on it, just totally dry because I was choking it down too. And I had a little bit of orange juice left, and I threw it in the muesli. And a whole new world opened up for me and my daughter. So tonight, we're going to serve you muesli with orange juice. Try it, please. And if you don't want to try it, just let the ladies know. They won't be offended, and neither will I, but I'm going to tell you, you'll be missing out because all the berries in there are organic. And they were delicious. The oats are organic. Couldn't find organic orange juice in Florida, but I found non-GMO orange juice in Florida. So that's what we're putting on that. And so muesli is on page 19. And muesli is one of those things, it's sort of like throwing a salad together. You know what I mean? You put in it what you like. Page 19 in the cookbook. And so let me tell you exactly what's in our muesli tonight. We have 1.5, well, I didn't put, okay, we have oat flakes, 19. Yeah. Okay, so in your bowl are organic oat flakes, blueberries, blackberries, and strawberries. I also really liked muesli with pineapple bits in it. I thought that was really good. Now, you might want apple, banana, or any other fruit pieces you might like, but I'm going to tell you what really makes this muesli good. In your muesli, you have walnuts and pecans. Do you guys say pecan or pecan? Oh, thank you. I'm from Oklahoma. We're neighbors. Oh, Okay, I say pecan too, and they give me a hard time in Oklahoma about that. Okay, I always put a little bit of sweetened coconut because I feel like that makes it all come together. Okay, so I'm going to tell you what, I have some really good advice for you about tomorrow morning. When you get up tomorrow morning, I want you to drink a big glass of water, okay? Because you are getting more fiber tonight than you can shake a stick at, okay? And by the time we're done tonight, you might not even need breakfast tomorrow morning because you're going to get that much fiber, okay? Because on top of this, we're having something from we got a little taste of Europe and a little taste of Ardmore, Oklahoma. We're going to have some grits and gravy. So did everybody get muesli who wanted a bowl of muesli? Okay. So let's look at grits and gravy. And that is on page, ooh, I wonder if oh yes, it is. It's on page 24. And the gravy is something that's great on mashed potatoes. It could be used in a lot of different ways. We served it a lot at veggies over croquettes, or you know, for your turkey. Well, for me, it's always a turkey-less dinner, but it's really good on all kinds of things. But tonight you're going to try it on grits. So for grits, I take 2 cups of plain liquid soy milk and not sweetened, and I will bring that to a boil, and then I add my grits, and I add a little bit of salt to the liquid. And as it's coming to a boil, I stir my grits in, and I just whisk and whisk and whisk and whisk and whisk. If it gets too thick, you just add a little bit more um, water or milk. Because I knew that Phoebe has an allergy to cashews and can't have the gravy, I added just a dollop of vegan cheese to it to give it a little more flavor, so Phoebe would enjoy it without gravy. You can also, a lot of times what I would do at veggies is throw some organic corn in there. Or if I wanted it spicy, I might throw some green chilies in there. Not that they're real, I use the mild green chilies. I did not do that tonight. As it sits, it does get thicker. So just bear that in mind. Okay, now for the gravy. I had fun with gravy today. I turned my back on the blender, and the blender decided to explode all over Melissa's kitchen. Fortunately, she was working at the time, so I was able to clean it up before she saw it. She had asked me the day before, which do you like better, a Blendtec or a Vitamix? And I said, I don't really know because I've never really used a Blendtec. And after that happened, I told her today, I said, my loyalties are with Vitamix, because those Vitamix lids do not come off. All right, gravy's easy. And it's easy to double this recipe and make more gravy. If you're going to start doubling or tripling it because you have a crowd, we have a little trick that we do at veggies. We'll put a little bit of the water in along with our cashews, and I use raw whole cashews, and rinse your cashews. Just rinse them off real well. 2 tablespoons of cornstarch, half a teaspoon of salt, 2 tablespoons of tamari, which is a high grade of soy sauce. Okay, yes.
Tamari sauce versus Bragg.
Bragg's actually has a component in it. A friend of mine that's a doctor called them years ago, and they did say that one of their components is a form of MSG. It will change the flavor totally if you use Bragg's. So just a heads up. I generally in my cooking, don't use Bragg's, the Bragg's soy sauce. I really like tamari. It doesn't have any weird ingredients, and it's just a high grade soy sauce. Like if you go buy Kikkoman, you're going to find it has sodium benzoate or some kind of preservative in it. The tamari does not. It's also gluten free. Okay, so half a teaspoon granulated garlic, 2 teaspoons granulated onion. You're going to blend that all in your blender. Now, again, if you're doubling, tripling, sometimes we do this hugely in my cafe. So they'll take part of that water, bring it to a boil, blend this up, and you blend it until your blender is pretty warm. Half the secret is blending it till that is really smooth and creamy. People will say, well, that mine didn't taste like yours. And I'm like, you got to walk away from the blender. That was what I did today with the blend tech. Mental note, don't walk away from a blend tech. But you got to kind of walk away from it and let it blend really thoroughly. And then if you just started making a small batch, I would not do this. But if you're making a large batch, bring your water to a boil, then throw your blended ingredients in and whisk it. You won't burn it that way, right? So, and then tonight I added some Italian seasoning to it to give it a little extra flavor. Okay? Yes. Okay, granulated dissipates more readily in a recipe. So I always like the granulated. Yeah. It's harder, the powder kind of clumps. The granulated doesn't clump quite like that. Okay. Now, in my recipe book, I do talk about putting half a package of vegan sausage in there. You can do that. You can add, if this hadn't been a breakfast class, I would have been tempted to add I would have marinated and then sauteed some mushrooms and put that in there. It's really good like that. It's really good with marinated mushrooms in it. Okay, so any questions about that? All right. So you're also getting scrambled tofu. Well, I hope you like it. I didn't have a lot of the ingredients I normally have for scrambled tofu. So I had to wing this batch a little bit. Okay. In your recipe book, now this is what my husband loves scrambled tofu. So he'll eat it for days. So in your recipe book, it says 2 pounds of very firm tofu. Do you remember the tofu? Oh, I'm sorry, it's on page 23. Do you remember the tofu I showed you? Yes, that's the tofu I use. Walmart. And then you know what? Publix had it too. Publix carries it too. Exactly, exactly. I love that tofu. And oh, by the way, I wanted to mention this to you. How many of you know who Michael Greger is? Anybody know who Michael Greger is? I love nutritionfacts.org. Now, Michael Greger looks at about 10,000 studies a year. He looks at who funded the study, and then he comes up with conclusions based on who funded the study and what what I'm saying? Like, that's really important. Like, if you're going to look at a study on soy, you don't want a soy company to have done the study, right? They might have an agenda, but Michael Greger wrote a book called How Not to Die. And so his chapters are something like this: how not to die of breast cancer, how not to die of heart disease, how not to die of Alzheimer's, how not to die of liver failure, whatever. In his chapter on how not to die about breast cancer, I think you ladies will find this interesting. He says that women who have breast cancer, now this is totally opposite of what medical doctors are telling women. Please remember, he is a medical doctor. He says the studies show that women who have breast cancer who eat soy live longer than women who had breast cancer who don't eat soy. And women who don't have breast cancer and eat soy have way less incident of breast cancer than women who don't eat soy. And I think the reason that is because if you're using soy, there's a really good chance you're not using another product that is very carcinogenic that we'll talk about later. Okay, do you know that they have a fava bean curd that works exactly like the soy curd? Publix. Yeah, it works exactly like the soybean curd. Very high in fiber. Yes. And in fact, I think that they're doing a rice curd too. I think in your bigger cities that you probably have like an Asian market, and some of the Asian markets you can get rice curd and that works like soy curd also. Okay, so here's how we do scrambled tofu. I take the tofu, personally I put it in a food processor and just do it until it's broken up. I don't do it till it's real mushy. I just break it up. You can use your hands. While that is happening, I saute onion, some red pepper, and I'll either use granulated garlic or real garlic. And then what I do is after my onion is nice and sauteed and my pepper's sauteed, I put in all the rest of the ingredients, which includes nutritional yeast, chicken seasoning, which is optional. If you don't have chicken seasoning, you can just add a little bit more salt, tamari, turmeric, and I do not use the olive oil anymore. I don't do it with olive oil anymore. I just leave that out. That's scrambled tofu on page 23. Okay, it's very easy. Here's some fun things you can do with scrambled tofu. You can put it in rice and make stir-fried rice with it. I will put it in my lasagnas. If I have leftover scrambled tofu, I'll put it in my lasagna, a layer of that. It's great in like a whole grain tortilla. My kids love it. When my kids would come home, we'd make scrambled tofu, we'd make home style potatoes, we'd get out the tortillas and load the tortillas with the scrambled tofu and the potatoes, and we'd have salsa and vegan cheese. And yeah, my kids always loved coming home from college. They ate good. Any questions about that? That's very easy. Now, this is not a great, I didn't have all the seasonings that I wanted to put it in there. So I just kind of winged it tonight, but I think it's okay. Good. It's hard to not be good. It's hard to not make it good. And by the way, turmeric. Y'all know that turmeric helps to prevent Alzheimer's, good for inflammation, right? We had it in the dressing last night. We had it in the tofu tonight. Yes.
It's about gravy over grits. I'm from the South, and I thought there is no way that I'm going to be able to eat them. It is delicious.
Oh, praise the Lord. I'm telling you, cashew gravy is amazing. We love it. Okay, good stuff. Yeah, I'm not from the South, and I had a judge come to me and say, "You need to learn how to do okra." I said, "Okra? How do I do okra?" So this judge told me how to do okra, and I am telling you, I could make a fortune in Ardmore, Oklahoma, baking okra. Oh, it's crazy. They go crazy over it. You know what I do? He didn't tell me to do this, but I put cornmeal on it and a little nutritional yeast and a little salt, and then a little bit of oil, and then I stick it in the oven and I bake it till it's really crispy, and they really love it. Okay, so how many of you have ever had dessert with breakfast? A woman after my own heart. Okay, well, tonight you're going to get a little dessert with your breakfast. Hey, ladies, don't forget the dessert for the breakfast. We're ready. We want to see it. I'm just going to tell you right now that the recipe for what I made for dessert is not in the cookbook. But I'm going to give it to you. Okay, no problem. Get a pen and a paper out. Oh, they're called flax and rice croquettes. You know, I didn't want to call them Prozac patties and get busted for some kind of. Oh no, flax and rice croquettes. So look it up in the back. You know, if you say Prozac there, then they come after you for using their name. Okay. So, careful. Oh yeah. Don't forget the True Whip. Oh, who was the person who told me that you couldn't find apple juice? Constant Publix. No, but I found the apple. As long as I can get apple, I'm fine. Any of those three work. So, okay, we're having chia pudding for dessert. Okay, now listen. This is why I'm telling you in the morning when you wake up, you drink a big glass of water, okay? Because then you might just be like, wow, thank you, Mary. And I'm going to tell you right now, about the time you eat the chia pudding, you're going to realize how full you are. Okay, so here is a basic recipe for chia pudding. To every 2 cups of liquid, so that liquid, I made you strawberry juice. And I made, so strawberry juice, and then I used vanilla almond milk for the other one. So you have a little parfait there, half is strawberry, half is vanilla. Chia, by the way, is the new tapioca. Tapioca had 0 nutritional value. Chia is high, very high in fiber, and it's very high in omega-3 fatty acids. Okay, so it's really good for you. So okay, now listen, because I'm not going to repeat myself, I don't think. For every 2 cups of liquid, you put in a half a cup plus 2 tablespoons of chia. If you don't want it as thick as you got it tonight, only do a half a cup. Now, a half a cup plus 2 tablespoons. And now here's the thing. You've got to be committed to stirring it. Like, especially when I make these big batches like this. I made a huge batch of this today. You have to stir it about every 5 minutes, or what happens is all your chia sinks to the bottom and congeals, okay? So until it gets thick, stir it real briskly about every 5 minutes until you see it starting to set up. Okay, now I'll tell you my secret for how I made the strawberry juice. I did 1 can of the apple juice. Now you have to remember I have a pretty big blender. It's an 8-cup blender. I did 1 cup of apple, 1 container of frozen apple. You can also use 100% white grape or 100% pineapple. Either will work. It's the frozen concentrate. And then you're going to add, are you listening? 1 of those cans then of water, just one. And then I only know how to do this in a big batch, so please forgive me. I've been cooking for a lot of people my entire life. I then filled the blender about 3/4 full of frozen strawberries. And I held the lid down because I learned a lesson. And I turned it on and I blended it and I blended it quite a bit because I wanted it to not be frozen. Are you hearing me? Like if it's frozen, it's harder to get your chia to do its thing. So I blended it. And now if that's too much for you, I'm going to tell you what you can do. You can make that much and then you can take half of it and freeze it. And it makes a great smoothie. It's a strawberry smoothie. And oh my goodness, people used to say, please give me your strawberry smoothie recipe. I'm like, oh, seriously, it's like 2 things. Frozen concentrated apple juice and strawberries. Now, for the other layer, I did, like I said, vanilla almond milk. Yes.
Substituting the almond milk.
Oh, anything, any kind of milk would do. Rice milk will work. Now, rice milk is a little thinner. You might find you have to add a little more chia. The great thing about the chia is you can always add more if it's not as thick as you want. Just remember to stir it so it doesn't clump. Okay? You sure could, but I think you're still going to have to keep stirring it. I don't know. I don't know how that would work for sure, but try it. It's worth a try. Okay. All right. Did everybody get some chia pudding? Oh, and you're going to be so good and full. You might hate me. That is totally okay. We will eat it for breakfast. Okay. All right. Any questions about, yes. How much what? 2 cups of milk or any kind of liquid. Listen. Yes, to a 1/2 cup plus 2 tablespoons. Listen, you could make this with grape juice. You know what I'm saying? You could make it with pineapple juice. I mean, you could do any kind of juice. And if you make it a little thinner than I did, I kind of like it thick and puddingy. I don't think that's a word, but hey. You could, if you make it a little less thick, you can throw some fruit in there, and that's really nice. Anyway. Oh, the topping is True Whip. I just, it had to be special for all y'all. I got the True Whip. Okay, there's like 3 kinds of True Whip. And the last one on the freezer shelf at Publix said vegan. Now, it didn't necessarily say healthy, but we don't eat this every day, right? It's a treat. Okay. All right. So, no more questions? Good. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Or, my favorite yogurt is the Forager that's cashew. I haven't found it here though, but no, but I'm soon as I get a little money saved up, I want to buy one of those machines where you can make your own milk, and then I'm going to work on my own yogurt. Yeah. I think I kind of have the idea how to do it. So I think one of those milk machines is a great idea. Yes, yes. Does anybody have one of those machines? Does it work well? Okay. Well, listen, if you want to get rid of it, just let me know. I'll take it back to Ardmore. Okay. So, all right. Is everybody happy? Okay, good. Yeah, you're going to be full. There's no way around that. But tomorrow morning, what are you going to do? Drink a big glass of water when you wake up, and you'll really be happy. Okay. So tonight, I just want you to know that I've had people tell me, how do you expect people to feel about you when you wipe out the 5 food groups? Thank you. I hope so. But not always. And I understand. And I just want you to just be patient, because tomorrow night is everything you can do to have good health. But tonight are some really critical things, and probably one of them is the most critical in my opinion. And it's the one that you could get healthiest the fastest, really. And so we're going to talk about 5 roads to good health, and I'm just going to tell you they all lead out. So we're going to talk about, first of all, we're just going to talk about 4: nicotine, caffeine, alcohol, unclean meats. Okay, so what's the problem with these 3 right off the bat? What do they have in common? They're addictive, right? And listen, if you're addicted to any of these things, I have no judgment on that. I've been addicted to every one of those things. I was a 20-year smoker. And I started when I was 10. Oh, thanks. That helps if I turn it on, huh? I started smoking when I was 10, and I smoked till I was 30. And I'm going to tell you, the hardest thing I ever did was quit smoking. That is a toughie. But it can be done. And I bet you there are people in this room who know how to do 5-day smoking plans if you want to quit smoking. And if there isn't a person in this room other than me that knows how to do one, I would come back just to do that, because they have an 87% success rate. So we're going to look at these. The other thing about the first 3, they all affect the same part of your body. Your frontal lobe. Let's take a look at this for a second. If you have a cat, 3.5% of its brain is in frontal lobe. Okay, so it's really difficult to teach a kitty how to sit, roll over, shake. My nephew was like, "Oh, Aunt Mary, I taught my cat how to sit," and that cat, he for 30 minutes tried to prove to me that it would sit, and it never did. There's a cool Facebook thing that somebody did about cats, though, and they had these cats trained, and that was kind of cool. But the average cat only has 3.5%. A dog has double that. So look at how much more a dog has going as far as learning, right, than a cat. It's pretty powerful, right? So you're starting to understand frontal lobe is kind of important here, right? So monkeys, they have 18% of their brain is frontal lobe. They make terrible pets, because as a kid we had one, and they're so smart. That monkey could get into anything and everything. He was actually given to us by a place called Reptile Gardens, because we were their best customers. And they called my mom up one day and said, "We got this monkey and we don't do monkeys." And I'm telling you, they're so smart. What do you think you have? Sometimes it feels about as much as your dog, right? Some days I wonder if my dog has more. Right on, Phoebe. Phoebe's hit the button. It's actually 35 to 38, but she was really close. That's our frontal lobe. And that's the difference between us and animals, because we have this our brain is almost a third or more than a third frontal lobe. We have the privilege to commune with the Creator. And we do that through our frontal lobe. Now, there are other parts of your brain that are responsible for your coordination and other things. Your frontal lobe is very important. So we don't want to mess that up, right? Okay, so let's take a look at, thank you. So, and I know, we all know this, and it's a no-brainer, but I want to share some things with you about this. There's 4,000 known chemicals in every puff of a cigarette, and 43 of them are known carcinogens. Okay, so that makes it really interesting if you're hanging around with a smoker and they're finding secondhand smoke is just as dangerous as the one that the smoker gets. And now they're talking about third-hand smoke. That's what's in your drapes, your carpet, right? Um, it's a problem. So 16 forms of cancer are related to smoking. Nearly all of them are critical areas of the body, particularly the lungs, right? 1/3 of all cancer deaths are directly attributed to smoking cigarettes. And 150,000 people die every year of smoking related cancers. Now that might be the smoker and the secondhand combined, I'm not sure. But here's the thing, even I used to do Bible studies in a men's recovery house, and the guy who ran the house was a friend of mine, and every single one of those men smoked, right? So I would come on 6 o'clock on Monday nights, and the rule was nobody smokes in the house after 3 on Monday nights because Mary's coming. And I would go home, and my husband said, Mary, I thought they weren't smoking around you. And I said, they're not. He said, well, you sure smell like a cigarette to me. I mean, do you know what I mean? It's so pervasive. It's so pervasive. So it's worth it to do Bible studies. But otherwise, I don't go to places where there's cigarette smoke. There's what it does to your lungs. And look at what it's doing to the heart, right? The heart is also enlarging. All right, so if you need help with that one, please let me know. I'll find somebody to help you. That was a hard one for me. And here's the thing. I remember thinking to myself, I wish I was 5 years down the road with this deal, right? Because I was thinking in 5 years, I'll be over this, I'll be through it. It was hard. And I remember about 5 or 6 years later, I walked into a gas station and they had my favorite cigarette brand on sale along with Butterfingers, and that had been my favorite candy bar. and and this little voice said, wouldn't a cigarette and a Butterfinger be good right now? And I'm like, turning around, I walk back out, I get in the car, I look at my son, I said, go pay for the gas. He goes, Mom, you were just, I said, go pay for the gas. Because I'm not going to stand around and listen to that lie for very long. So remember this, there's a great Bible principle. There's a really great Bible principle for getting off of things that we're addicted to. Are you listening? Make no provision for the lust of the flesh. So when I quit smoking, guess what? I did not hide cigarettes in my house anywhere. I didn't. I knew if they were there, I was going to smoke them. So that's a great principle to remember. And here's another great principle. I can do all things through Christ Jesus who strengthens me. Amen. Okay, so let's talk. 38,000 people die every year. This is from the American Heart Association website. 38,000 people die every year of heart disease as a direct result of secondhand smoke. I think one of my aunts died that way. She actually died before my uncle, and my uncle smoked like a chimney. I mean, he was just always had a cigarette in his hands, and she died of cancer first. Okay, so let's talk about caffeine. I know you maybe don't want to hear this, but it's also addictive. And it has far-reaching effects on the brain, and scientists now know it increases dopamine levels in our brain, which may contribute to many different psychiatric illnesses, including schizophrenia. Now, my mother was schizophrenic, and she was really, truly a schizophrenic. She was extremely brilliant. And she came to live with me, and one day my husband came to me. My husband is, his moral compass points true north, okay? Just a little side note, we got a bill once from IRS for a penny. And I told him to send them a penny. And just send a penny in the mail, honey. And he goes, honey, I can't do that. Anyway, like he's just a true man of God. He came to me and he goes, Mary, I have a moral dilemma. I said, really, what's that? And he goes, well, your mother, I've noticed she's way more aggressive when she drinks her coffee. And she had like the percolated kind, she had the instant kind, and she had the flavored kind. And I said, yeah. He said, well, I dumped out her percolated kind and I put some of our fake stuff in there. And I dumped out her instant and I put Dandy Blend in there. And I dumped out her flavored and I put one of ours in there. He said, and I feel terrible. I said, well, let's see what happens. And you know what? My mother did. The difference was significant. And then she ran out. Okay, so we replaced it again, and we were getting along with my mom. She could have lived with me forever. And then we replaced it again, and she caught him. And the gig was up. And we had to have her go stay in a nursing home because on caffeine, she was so aggressive towards our youngest child. And so the nursing home, the first nursing home kicked her out. Second nursing home was a psychiatric nursing home because nobody else would take her. And then I found a nursing home in Ardmore that was quiet and it was run by this just precious woman who went and saw my mother an hour from Ardmore and came back and said, I love your mom. She said she can stay here even though she's schizophrenic because they don't like to have schizophrenics in these nursing homes. She said, but she's got to have a private room. I said, okay, I'll tell you what else you got to do. She said, what? I said, no caffeine. She cannot be drinking coffee. She said, can you keep a secret? I said, of course. She said, we use decaf for everybody here because it makes all of them crabby. So, you know, it's, I mean, and listen, when people come into our store and they have anxiety or depression, the first thing I want to know is how much caffeine you're drinking, right? Like anxiety, I mean, it's just, it goes hand in hand with caffeine. All right, so it's a major contributor to depression and anxiety. It can be instrumental in the development of osteoporosis. 1 cup of coffee a day, 365 days a year, and you can lose up to 3% of your bone mass. Now, that might not sound like a lot, but take that times 10, okay? And listen, this is very important. We want to hang on to our bones, right? We want to stay strong. So you really give this some thought. It elevates blood pressure and keeps it elevated for up to 12 hours. Because the half-life of caffeine in your body is 12 hours. So if you drink a couple cups of coffee in the morning and you have about 300 or whatever milligrams of caffeine in your system, 12 hours later, you still have 150 mgs there. So here's, okay, I was doing this class in Minnesota, and this lady came to me and she goes, I knew you were going to talk about caffeine. I knew it, I knew it, I knew it. So I quit it 2 days ago because I just didn't want to feel convicted about it. She said, but Mary, 24 hours later, I passed out and hit the floor. I said, what? She said, my blood pressure dropped so far. She said, and she was taking meds for blood pressure. And then she quits the caffeine and all of a sudden, guess what? The brick is gone, right? She got off her blood pressure meds. This is real. I mean, listen, don't get mad at me. I'm just trying to help you out and you can do what you want with this info, okay? Caffeine may be a co-carcinogen leading to cancers of the kidney, breast, colon, and bladder. And, you know, my dad was a urologist, and he used to tell me, he'd say bladder cancers, he said, sometimes they're the easiest and sometimes they're the worst. He said, and you never know till you get in there and you know, see what's going on. So something to avoid. All right. How about alcohol? I know everybody says, well, you know, if you drink a glass of wine a day, they say you'll live longer, right? But they're talking to people who maybe smoke, probably use caffeine, live stressed out lives. Okay, those people probably would live longer. if they had a glass of wine a day. But I'll tell you what, you can do it with grape juice. Same component in dark grape juice as there is in wine. Alcohol is regarded by social analysts as America's #1 public enemy. It impairs brain function and claims the lives of at least 100,000 people every year. And it reduces the body's ability to fight bacteria and viruses by approximately 67%. I was driving one time, I don't remember what state, but there was a billboard and it talked about how many billions of dollars are spent on alcohol every year, and even more billions of dollars to fix the problem that all those billions of dollars cause on alcohol. And that comes in the form of lost production, broken families, car accidents, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? So it can also raise your blood pressure. We don't think of it that way, but alcohol can raise your blood pressure. It will definitely elevate your triglycerides, cause chronic fatigue, create vitamin and mineral deficiencies, contribute to gout, and overconsumption can lead to 60 plus health problems. So it's the third leading cause of preventable death in our country. So I love this because, and I'm just going to tell you, I was addicted to it myself once. Okay, this was a little easier than cigarettes, I'll say that, but it wasn't all that easy either. On my next birthday, I'll have 37 years of sobriety. And my dad, on my 25th anniversary, he had 50. Yeah, my dad died with 69 years of sobriety, and I have his 69th chip. Who has woe? Who has sorrow? Who has contentions? Who has babbling? Oh, when I think of how I acted when I was using this stuff, it's embarrassing. Who has wounds without cause? Who has redness of eyes? They that tarry long at the wine. They that go to seek mixed wine. That's the hard stuff, right? Look not thou upon the wine when it moves in, when it is red, when it gives his color in the cup, when it moves itself aright. At the last it bites like a serpent and stings like an adder. Thine eyes shall behold strange women, and thine heart shall utter perverse things. Yes.
Used to be, we could drink something that was good. Oh, it's hard now.
Yeah, no, I know it's weird. This is just a very true proverb, and it breaks my heart. But fairly regularly in the news that surrounds what they call Lake Texoma, because Oklahoma and Texas share this lake. Frequently in the Lake Texoma news, you will see people who have been put into jail for the rest of their lives because they have so many DUIs. And they just finally ultimately put them in jail for life. Yeah, it's horrifying, right? I just, it breaks my heart. So just again, just a little food for thought here, okay? So now I want to talk to you about, you know what I forgot to bring, Pastor, is my Bible. I want to read this. Is there a Bible in the house? Thank you. Okay, we're going to talk about unclean meats. Oh, yes, Leviticus 11, please. And I'm not going to define this. We're going to let God do that. How do you feel about that? Should we let God do this? I would prefer the King James Version. Okay, thank you so much. Okay. And the Lord spake unto, good thing I can see well. And the Lord spake unto Moses and to Aaron, saying unto them, speak unto the children of Israel, saying, these are the beasts which you shall eat among all the beasts that are on the earth. Whatsoever parts the hoof and is cloven footed, that shall you eat among the beasts, and choose the cuds. Excuse me. Whatsoever parts the hoof and is cloven footed, and choose the cud, that shall you eat. Nevertheless, these shall you not eat of them that chew the cud, or of them that divide the hoof, as the camel. I'm so sorry. No camel burgers on the way home tonight, okay? Just don't let it happen. Because he chews the cud but divides not the hoof, he is unclean to you. Now, I have a question for you. What do you think that means? What does the word unclean mean to you? Not fit to eat? That's a good one. Dirty? I mean, think it needs a bath? I mean, could we wash it up and make it clean? Okay, I'm going to tell you that if you go to the Hebrew, to the root word of unclean, it means, are you ready? This will help you out a lot. Contaminated. Okay, so you're walking through the grocery store and you see a sign that says Camel Burger, 75% off, right? And you're like, oh, no, I don't think so. Contaminated.
What about
Well, we're getting there. Just hang on a second, okay? Okay, and the coney. Do you know what a coney is? No coney dogs tonight either, okay? It's actually a rock badger. I don't think we're going to eat that. He chews the cud but divides not the hoof. He is unclean, or Mary would say contaminated. And the hair. What's a hair? Oh, because he chews the cud but divides not the hoof, he is unclean to you. I was running through an airport. You got to realize that probably for like 20 years, maybe 25 years, I don't know. It's been a long time. Life has kind of passed me quickly. I spent a lot of time running through airports, right? And one time I stopped in my tracks because I saw a magazine called Science Magazine, and the headline was parasites. Okay, and I was like, oh, I got to take a few minutes to read that. I wish I had bought the magazine. The takeaway of what I read was that if you want a surefire case of hookworms, eat hair. Okay, and here's where things get a little sticky. And the swine, though he divide the hoof and be cloven footed, yet he chews not the cud, he is unclean to you. Now I want to show you something. I'm going to hang on to your phone for a minute, Pastor. I want to show you something before you get mad at me. This is sister cirrhosis. Okay, now can you all see? Oh, I guess, do I have a light? I don't have a light. Can you all see the little widgets in this? This is from the New England Journal of Medicine. Do you see all those little things? That is sister cirrhosis, the little white things. Baby pork tapeworm infestation. Okay. Now you can go on to Dr. Greger's website and you can watch videos on all kinds of stuff. Go listen to his video on sister cirrhosis, or just type in the search bar baby pork tapeworms. Let me tell you what you will learn. The vast majority of pork in North America carries baby pork tapeworms. Okay. It is the most prominent parasitical infestation in North America. It can be the cause of migraine headaches. They can migrate all the way up to your brain. And according to Dr. Greger, who has a lot of integrity, they can even start coming out your eyes. Now, he gives you some advice as to how to eat pork if you are going to eat pork. This is what he says. You cut it into small pieces. You freeze it at sub-zero temperatures for 3 months. Then when you take it out, you cook it till it is very crisp, and maybe you will have killed the baby pork tapeworms. Okay, so this is how I feel about this, okay? There's a reason God said, don't eat it. Okay, he wasn't trying to ruin our fun. He was trying to help us stay healthy. I just found this fascinating. Go listen to his talk on this. It's just fascinating. Yes, nutritionfacts.org. And listen, Dr. Greger, he has thousands of videos and he's really, really good. He's amazing, actually. And this is the New England Journal of Medicine. I mean, okay, so here's some of the clean animals, right? Cows are clean now. That would be without the blood also. Okay. The blood is, God said, don't eat the blood. That life is in the blood. But sheep, buffalo, deer, what else can you think of that would be clean? Goat. Somebody once told me that giraffe was clean, and I was like, okay, hey, have fun. I'm not sure how you would skin it. It's a type of antelope. Okay, and okay, yes, antelope are clean too. Yes. All right. So what wouldn't be clean in this category? All right. So swine, bear. There was a Chinese restaurant across the street from our first veggies in Rapid City, South Dakota, and they got shut down for months because they found the carcass of a Saint Bernard in their freezer. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And they think, well, and horses are a big thing in France. They slaughter horses and send them over to France. It makes me crazy. I never eat my horse. Never. Oy, oy vey. So just a few thoughts. Now I want to talk to you a little further here. Just a little further, okay? Hi, I'm sorry. Okay. These shall you eat of all that are in the waters. Woo! Whatsoever has fins and scales in the waters, in the seas, and in the rivers, them shall you eat. And all that have not fins and scales in the seas and in the rivers, of all that move in the waters, and of any living thing which is in the waters, they shall be an abomination unto you. Yeah, that got heavy, right? The abomination, a little heavier than unclean, I think. Thank you, Pastor. So, okay. So they know that in the Navy, I understand they spent lots of money coming up with a book to tell their sailors who were stranded at sea what they could and couldn't eat and what might, kill them. There's certain things, if you pull it out of the ocean, you might not survive that. But do you know at the end of the book what and I have not seen this personally, but I've heard it from people in the know. What they say that at the end of the book it says, when in doubt, if it has fins and scales, it's safe to eat. So, where I live, people eat catfish. I mean, it's a huge thing. I have a friend who loves to go on fishing expeditions, and I said to him one time, I said, why don't you come to Oklahoma and we'll get you a fishing expedition. They call it noodling. Lobster, shrimp, shark. These are things that don't have fins and scales. So what would be on the clean side? Trout, salmon, bass, snapper, halibut, grouper. Somebody once said to me, well, shark cartilage will cure cancer. And I'm like, I think that's one of those really ridiculous things that they come up with to sell shark cartilage. Okay, but I want to show you what happens in all lakes, rivers, ponds, everywhere. It's called biomagnification. So let's say there's a pond out back here, there's a swimming pool, but let's a little bigger than that swimming pool. And there were 0.02 parts per million of DDT in that pond. And that's reasonable because DDT is a POP, a persistent organic pollutant. It's still in our atmosphere and in our soil and in Okay, so it's also in the water, right? So if you have that much in a pond, the plant life in the pond will have 5 parts per million approximately. The little fish that eat the plants are going to be contaminated with 30 to 400 parts per million, and the big fish that eat the little fish can be up to 2,500 parts per million of DDT. Do you know, years ago in Rapid City, South Dakota, I don't know why they did this in the Rapid City Journal, they published this whole thing about never eating fish out of the Great Lakes because it's so contaminated. And if you were going to do it, only do it once a month and never feed it to your small children because they knew how contaminated those Great Lakes are. And you know, it's unfortunate, friends. We live in a world that's the case in the world we live. My advice would be if you're going to eat fish, eat lots of fiber. Why? It'll help get rid of the toxins. I might even say, you might think about eating more veggies. Okay, so let me see here. Where's Melissa? Melissa, will you lock the door, please? Oh, I know, this is going to be hard, but look, we'll get through it. This is, okay, I know. I've got rid of all the 5 food groups, but I recreated them. Fruits, vegetables, nuts, grains. Fruits, vegetables, nuts, grains. Oh. How about if we say fruits, vegetables, nuts, grains, water? Okay. This is the one I think is the biggie. And I'm going to tell you why I think it's the biggie. Because more cancers are caused by this than probably any other, even more than chemicals. In fact, I'm going to show you what T. Colin Campbell says about this. And they studied millions of people, not just thousands, millions. So we're kind of sold a bill of goods on this, okay? This is a product that's meant to take a calf and raise it 400 or 500 pounds in less than a year. How many of you want to gain 400 pounds in the next year? And you know, you laugh, but I had a friend who was vegetarian and he weighed 265 pounds and he went to his mom and he said, I'm going all the way. I don't want any more cheese, no more milk, no more eggs. She said, fine, you're on your own. But a year later, he weighed 165 pounds. Okay, this is cow juice. I mean, it's meant for cows. The Dairy Board happens to be the single largest purveyor of nutritional education in America. So that's kind of a problem. You think they're selling carrot juice? Probably not. Okay, so here are some of now this says childhood diseases, but this also relates to us as adults, okay? Here are diseases you can get rid of if you get rid of the dairy. Allergies. I have so many people who will come to me and tell me, since I've been off of Dairy Mary for a year, like we have allergies so bad in Oklahoma. They told me, you're going to have allergies in a couple years. I've said, I've never had an allergy in my life except to pine nuts and buckwheat flour. They said, no, you're going to have allergies. You just watch. I've been there for 19 years. I don't have allergies, but I don't use dairy either. Iron deficiency anemia, that happens to small children. And then as a result, they get lowered intelligence. More on that in just a minute. Early atherosclerosis, juvenile diabetes. You know, I have 2 brother-in-laws who died of juvenile diabetes. They were both less than 40 years old. Do you know that we know that what turns on that gene so that kids end up with juvenile diabetes is the protein in dairy. If they never had gotten dairy, they would not have had juvenile diabetes. And I could show you so many places in the medical journals where they know this to be true. Okay? It's so frustrating. I mean, juvenile diabetes is a horrible disease to live with. Acne, if you know a kid who has acne, get them off of dairy. We've had so many friends. We had one friend that had that pitting kind of acne, and he was out of school, and we lived above that school, and when we were in Rapid City with Veggies, and he came to me, he said, Mama Mary, they tell me you can help me with my acne. I said, Clint, I said, just get rid of the dairy. Don't use milk. Don't use cheese. Don't eat ice cream. We can replace all of it anyway with almonds or cashews or whatever. He said, oh, that'll be easy because they don't cook like that at the school I'm at, right? He said, so I won't cheat. By the time he left the school, all that kid had were scars. He had no more acne. It's amazing what you can do. Rheumatoid arthritis. Dr. Frank Oski, he has a book called Don't Drink Your Milk. Now, Frank Oski, if you don't believe me, believe him. He's dead now, but he was the head of the pediatric department of Johns Hopkins University, and he was the chief surgeon there as well. And he wrote a book called Don't Drink Your Milk, and he said kids with rheumatoid arthritis that would come into his clinic, they would just get them off of dairy and their symptoms would disappear. It's just crazy. Dental decay. You know, I grew up, my dad was a doctor. I had cavity in every tooth in my mouth just about. And, you know, at a very young age, I quit milk because I didn't like it. But boy, I sure could feast on cheese. Infectious diseases. We took our kids off of dairy products and they quit getting sick. They just quit. I want to share the short version of this, but first I want to talk to you about leukemia. So they know, now hear this correctly, that not 87% of cows, but 87% of cow herds carry bovine infectious leukemia. And they take baby chimpanzees and they feed them dairy products that they know comes from a cow that has this to see if it will cross the species barrier. And guess what? It does. This is the cancer that that's most prevalent in children. The next most prevalent group of people that have leukemia are dairy farmers. Okay, so my kids, I had one that had a learning disability and chronic green stuff coming out his nose all the time, and two that had chronic ear infections. And the one with the green stuff and the learning disability had a lymph node that was about the size of half an egg, and they wanted to remove it. But I would think to myself, lymph node, you know, that seems important to me, right? And they didn't think it was cancerous. So one day, my brother, who knows it all, right? Do you all have a brother like that? Okay, well, Fred came in to pick up his kids that were living with me, and I said, you know, this vegetarian diet, my kids, one's got green stuff, and the other two have ear infections. And he said, Mary, I know what the problem is. I said, well, of course you do. You know it all. What is it? Sir, it's all that dairy. I was like, Johnny, Katie, your dad needs you. He's leaving right now because I don't want to talk about my dairy because I love cheese. I could care less about milk, but boy, was I having a love affair with cheese. And, you know, I got to thinking about it, got to thinking about that. We used to, you know, when I was a kid, I grew up with a ranch, didn't live on it, but we had a ranch and we used to rope the calves. And, you know, they have mucus all day long out one end and diarrhea all day long out the other. And I got to thinking about that. And I thought, wow, maybe he's right. Oh, this is really going to kill me. He'll torment me for years about this. I just know it, right? But I didn't care because I care about my kids. So I chopped up the cheese, told them to eat it, dumped all the milk down the drain. I had these two with ear infections, went to the doctor. Doctor gave me amoxicillin. One of them got a yeast infection, so I took her off. That was the day I coined the term guinea kids. Went back a week later, The one who's not getting the amoxicillin doesn't have an ear infection anymore. The one who is on the amoxicillin still has a bad ear infection. He gives me a prescription for a stronger antibiotic. I walked out the door and I didn't fill it. And I didn't say anything. I went back a week later, both of their ear infections are gone. And he wanted to write me another prescription. I said, what's that for? And he goes, this one needs a prophylactic. And I said, what? Wait, what does that mean? He said, he's going to get an antibiotic every day for the next 6 months. You know, and I just thought to myself, anyway, didn't do that either. And I'm not advising you to do what I do. I have an innate sense about some of this with me and my body and my children. And those two kids never got another ear infection again. They never had dairy again either. My child with a learning disability, it's in his school records that he began to learn. I could show you that. It's in his school records that he began to learn when we took him off dairy. And I'll just tell you the gross end of this story. One day we were at the beach. We lived in Minnetonka, Minnesota. In June it might be, late June it might be, high 80s, but the water's kind of cold because, it freezes over. And there's probably 100 people on this beach, but nobody in the water. And my son comes to me, goes, Mom, I got to blow my nose. I said, ooh, I forgot a Kleenex. He goes, I said, use your towel. He said, I don't want to blow my nose on a towel. I said, okay, go in the lake. And nobody else is in there. He did. And that child was out there blowing and blowing and blowing and blowing and blowing. And I'm like, are you okay? And finally he came back, I was like, what in the world, Patrick? What happened? He goes, Mom, I can breathe. First time, and I used to do this to him a lot to check on the lymph node. I flipped him up, the lymph node was gone. And I thought to myself, there went all that dairy, fish food in Lake Minnetonka. Yes, ma'am. Right, right. And it's interesting because, I mean, people give it to cats, but a cat wouldn't normally drink it. So I got a phone call when I was up in Rapid City from a guy who had a mountain lion. And he said, there's something wrong with my mountain lion's stomach. And somebody told me to call you. And I thought, well, that's interesting. So I said, can I come see your mountain lion? He's like, well, sure, come on out. So I took my kids so we could see this mountain lion, right? It was a pet, and the guy kind of used it in his little sort of zoo thing. Anyway, I asked him what he fed the mountain lion, and he was giving it milk all the time, right? I said, just cut the milk. Just get rid of the milk. It'll be fine. And you know what? It was. They're not meant to, yeah, I'm with you on that one. Okay, so this is Casey. And Casey is about, I don't know, he's probably about 10 years older from this picture. I got a call from his mother because Casey had chronic ear infections and they wanted to put tubes in his ears. And a man named David Asherick gave her my phone number. So she's calling me from Michigan and I'm in Rapid City. And I said, well, honey, just take him off of dairy. And she started crying. She goes, well, that's not going to happen because he's autistic and that's all he'll eat. And I said, really? I said, well, what if I told you that his autism will be positively affected by a dairy-free diet to some extent? She said, well, what am I going to do? My mom's a nurse. She'll kill me. I said, honey, I'm going to send you all kinds of stuff. I'm going to send you a cookbook. I'm going to send you all kinds of documentation on what this will do and how to do it right. So I did. So she had an appointment in 3 weeks for this kid to get ear tubes. And she called me up about 3 weeks later and she said his ear infection was finally gone. And she said, Mary, she said, they still want to put tubes in. What should I do? I said, that's your decision. I said, what I want to know is about the autism. Now, Casey was diagnosed as being very low functioning, slightly retarded, with a total inability to learn. Like he had never had social interactions, even with his grandparents. And his social interactions with his parents were very bad. And she started crying again. She said, Mary, 2 weeks ago, or excuse me, 2 weeks into the dairy free, I got a call from the special school Casey goes to. They told me to come pick him up. I said, is everything okay? They said, everything is perfectly fine. The light bulb has come on. He does not need to be here. And this young man, I had to convince him that I wasn't his savior, okay? Jesus is your savior. I just told your mother to quit. He and I spent time together at a Youth for Jesus conference, actually at a GYC conference. So he actually stayed with me. And I watched this young man just take notes and just answer questions and be so appropriate. And it just about tear your heart out. It just about tear your heart out. Because he could have ended up in an institution for the rest of his life drinking milk. You know what I mean? And he's not the only autistic child I've ever seen that this happened to. I worked with another lady, her child never spoken a word, and he was 4. And she broke her ankle trying to get to my class. And I thought, okay, I know who did that. I'm going in. And I went into her house and I taught her. And 4 days off of the dairy, her little boy wrapped his arms around her neck. I was there. And he said, I love you, Mommy. And I thought that woman would never stop crying. She said, I was never supposed to hear those words. And you know, it's not 100%, but there's always a degree. And I'm telling you that, that's why this is my soapbox. I still, so I still hear from this family. They're precious. Okay, so researchers in Italy have proven that prostate cancer risk increases in a dose-response fashion with milk drinking. Men who use more than 2 glasses of milk or its equivalent in cheese, and I want you to remember, it takes this much milk to make this much cheese, and then we're going to add a whole bunch of bacteria to it, okay? Some of my favorite authors on health, my very favorite author on health, makes this statement: cheese should never pass our lips. It is unfit for human consumption. They increase their risk of prostate cancer by 400%. Okay, this is not good. And ladies, guess what cancer we get? American Health Foundation found in examining death rates in several countries that the more milk and meat eaten in any country, the greater the risk of breast and ovarian cancers. And I'm going to tell you that I can honestly say to you tonight that every friend of mine who's gotten breast cancer, who has listened and stayed away from dairy from now on and gone more plant-based, they're still alive. And unfortunately, I can say the opposite about the ones who looked at me and said, I'm too addicted to cheese, I can't give it up. Do you know why we get addicted to cheese? Casomorphines. That there's a literal addiction that takes place in our brain. They're called casomorphines. So, come on now. Yes. Or that's equivalent cheese. I mean, okay, so this is from T. Colin Campbell. If you can look up T. Colin Campbell on YouTube. He has a PhD, and he and another doctor, what's the doctor in Forks? Esselstyn, yes. Esselstyn, yes. These men were both raised on dairy farms. And T. Colin Campbell did the China study. They didn't study 1,000 or 10,000 or 100,000. They studied millions of people. And then he found this research by a group of Indian researchers. They conducted a gold standard clinical trial, the kind that isolates one variable and performs a controlled experiment on it. The researchers fed aflatoxin. Aflatoxin is a very powerful carcinogen to two groups of rats. One group was fed a 20% animal protein, and the protein came from casein. That's the protein in dairy. The other group was protein deprived, ingesting only 5% of their calories from vegetable protein. Every single 20% casein fed rat developed cancer or cancer precursor lesions. Not a single rat on a 5% vegetable protein did. And they were given aflatoxin, which is highly carcinogenic. It's, yeah. So here are some of the conclusions reached by Dr. Campbell. You'll find this in his book, Whole. Animal protein intake determined cancer development far more than the dose of chemical carcinogen. And then he says, casein, this is a direct quote from his book, Whole. Casein is the most relevant chemical carcinogen ever identified. Yeah, that'll give you some pause for thought. Because T. Colin Campbell has nothing to sell. He'd just like to see people be healthy. And that's how I feel, right? Like I'm telling you, this is huge. And we see more results. I mean, look, fast results once you get off the dairy. Fast results. I could stand here for hours and tell you story after story after story after story because I hear about it every day because people come into our store. And it's really amazing. And all you got to do is look out there in the world too. And you know, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out why all these other milk companies are doing so well, and the milk company doesn't want them. They can't even call it, they're not supposed to even be calling it certain things, right? So what have you got to lose? Okay, so let me just ask you this. What have you got to lose to try this for a month? Just try being plant-based for a month. What have you got to lose? Weight? Cancer maybe? Allergies maybe? Aches and pains maybe? Infections? Yes. No, exactly. In fact, it doesn't taste good at all. And it tastes nasty. And there's even some vegan cheeses out there that I'm like, wow, that's nasty because it really actually tasted like the real thing. And the other thing you'll find is that, like, if you get far enough away from this, it hurts to put that stuff in your body, right? And I just want to challenge you. I challenged a family on this, and I told you about them, like the mom, the daughters, they lost like 100 pounds between them in like a month because they took the challenge. What have you got to lose? I promise you that if you can't handle it, it'll all still be there at Walmart and Publix, and you know, it'll still be there. It's not going anywhere. It is just amazing how you feel though. And I can't imagine. I've been plant-based, like completely plant-based for about 38. I quit eating animals before I even quit smoking and drinking. Yeah, you know, so just try it. And here's the other thing. Even if you, I mean, I'm when I learned all of this, my husband was with me. He wanted me to take classes because of his two brothers who had died. And he didn't want our kids getting juvenile diabetes, right? He had he was so concerned about that. So we got rid of everything. Now, some of you are get rid of everything kind of people, and some of you are small step kind of people. whatever you do, just remember that little change, little improvement, right? Big change, big improvement. No change, probably no improvement. Okay. So that, or yeah, or you get worse. Tomorrow night, it's everything you can do. Tomorrow night, we're going to talk about the can do's. Maybe I should insert that in the middle of the class. Okay. All right. So tomorrow night, I still haven't decided what we're going to have to eat yet, but hopefully it'll be something y'all love. Okay. So how many of you love Italian? Raise your hand if you love Italian. How many of you love Mexican? Raise your hand if you love Mexican. Woo, okay. How many of you love Chinese? Oh, okay, you guys are easy. All right, we'll figure out something. Just, yeah. Oh, and by the way, tomorrow night, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about a couple, I have a product that I developed at Veggies called Flax Appeal, and we're gonna offer to, if you want to buy, I'm going to share a couple things that really work. And then just a couple things. I used to share a lot of things, but there's a couple things that really work. Like Flax Appeal is a miracle thing on some level. It's interesting. You'll find it interesting. We're going to offer that you can get that, and Melissa's been so gracious to say we could ship an order to her house. So we could get the other cookbook, we could get my Flax Appeal, we could get some other things. And so just a heads up that if you're interested, the Flax Appeal is good for just a lot of different things, including lowering cholesterol. It's good for your head. And I'd sing you the Flax Appeal song, but you might not come back tomorrow if I did. No way. My husband told me, don't ever sing that song to anybody. All right. So you all have a nice evening. Know that you're loved, and that's why we share what we share.